All right, people, this will be a little change of pace as far as content. Don't start whining, dude. Don't want to hear it. We're building a computer today. Haven't built a gaming rig in a while. So we're building a new one from the ground up. So here are the parts you're going to need if you're going to build a PC yourself. Well, you need a case. We went with the Corsair something 4000 series RGB. It's got a tempered glass on the side and the front, air vents all along the side. There's red, blue, green, 120 millimeter fans that'll change color and do whatever. You can control that. Didn't come with one in the back, so I bought an extra one. So we'll have ample cooling, 3 big fans blowing in from that side, and then one sucking it out the back. What you're also going to need, well, you need a motherboard. You need a processor. We went with the new 12th gen Alder Lake-based Core i5 13600K. That's supposedly the best bang for the buck. Offers you near the i9 performance in games for half the price. Need a decent cooling fan for that. Then you're going to need some thermal compound to make sure that between the base of this and the top of the CPU die, you get good thermal conductivity. We'll do that. What else are you going to need? Well, you're going to need a power supply to power the whole thing. We went with the Corsair RMX series 850 watt. What else you need? Well, you need some storage. So we got Western Digital Black up to 7,300 megabyte per second NVMe SSD storage. So no mechanical hard drives. It's all digital storage. We've got a 1 terabyte, which is going to be our Windows 11, which you'll also need a copy of. USB, make sure if you don't get a DVD drive, make sure when you get Windows 11, you go ahead and get it on the USB drive. So we have 1 terabyte storage for Windows and drivers and all that. And then we have a 4 terabyte that's going to store, all of our programs, games, all that kind of crap. Let's see what else. I did make sure on this motherboard, I got this one specifically. I've had really good luck with Gigabyte, but it has 4 slots for these types of hard drives. A lot of times you get 1 slot and then anything else you got to add, like using the SATA connectors and stuff like that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted all digital. So I got a board that has 4 of those slots. So we're going to have 5 terabytes out of the gate, but I could add another 2 4 terabytes if I wanted. So that's really cool. It also does RAID. You can set up a RAID array if you want. I didn't want to do any of that. And then for RAM, we've got the G.Skill RipJaws. These are PC 3600 DDR4, 2 32 gigabyte sticks. So we're going to have 64 gigs of RAM with fast processor, tons of fast storage on a good gaming board. And then last, if you're gaming, your video card. This was the fastest video card I could find under $1,000. So these come in at $900. That's the new Radeon RX 7900 XT. I wanted the XTX. It's a little bit faster. Unfortunately, nobody has them. And if you go over to NVIDIA, any of the NVIDIA cards that would be a match for this are like $1,500 and up if you can find them. So between the chip shortages and stuff like that because of all the stupid COVID lockdowns, and because of scalpers and people buying up all the damn high-powered video cards for the last 2 years to set up Bitcoin mining farms, it's really trashed the damn video card market. You used to be able to walk into any computer store and have a wide selection from the Primo cards on down to basic cards and stuff. And it's really hard finding this stuff. So most of the stuff I got off Amazon, this and the 1 terabyte drive and the video card, I had to go to Micro Center to get. This I had to get from Newegg. That I got the case from Amazon. So what we're going to do now is put it together. So I'll try to splice this all together because it's going to take a little while. But the first steps that you're going to want to do is get a clear workspace. I'm going to shut the camera off in a minute. Go get a towel. I'm going to lay a towel down on the table for 2 reasons. One, I don't want the anything on the hard case or anything like that to scratch the tabletop. Also, when you drop little screws, and you will, hey, there's Bella in her little winter sweater because it's going to be like 12 degrees out. Looking snazzy, dog. Looking snazzy. You don't want to, when you drop a screw, when it hits the table, it bounces and then it's down on the carpet or under the couch and you got to go finding it. If you put the towel down, like a bath towel, it's more likely for the screw to just hit and stop and it'll be right there where you dropped it. So we're going to do that. First thing we're going to do is set that up, get all this other stuff off the table and bring it up as I need it. the first step is going to be installing the CPU to the motherboard, and then installing the thermal compound and putting on the fan. And the fan has a bracket because it's big, it's heavy. You'll see me putting this on, and we'll go over the specs of it and stuff. That's going to be sitting on the motherboard. The motherboard's going to be sitting vertical like this in the case when the case is standing up. And there's a backing plate that goes on the back of the motherboard to help secure and support all that weight. So for that reason, it's not the old days where you put the motherboard in first and connect your connectors and power supply and all that stuff, and then you drop in the CPU and the fan just clicks on. Not when you got these big boys. You know, you've got to have the bracket mounted behind it, and once the motherboard is mounted and secured into the chassis of the case, you can't really get to the back of it to do that. Now, some cases might, and I'm saying this because when we take this off, I may find some cases put a hole there. Let's see. Can I do this with one hand? Make sure there's no tape holding it in place. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. That's unsecured, so that's good. Okay. So make sure I didn't break anything. So this one, I might luck out in that inside here, oops, the back area where the CPU is actually is in that. When you take the other side off, I will actually be able to get at that. Now I'm still going to mount it and drop it in and do that. We'll go over why I'm going to mount it the way I am and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we'll do that. Looks like there's a board on the back. I don't know what that's for. Probably going to have to pull out the manual. I think that's for if you've got physical hard drives, they mount on the tray on the back. And so you plug into that and go from there. So anyway, let me go get a towel, clean this up, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So in light of the fact, I found out that board down here, that's the fan controller because you can control the colors and all that stuff. So it's got 3 extra ports. So we're going to plug this fan we're going to mount back here into that board as well. And then that plugs into the motherboard. So anyway, what we're going to do is, because this has that mounting area clear to be able to get to the back, which is really nice because if you ever had to change your CPU fan, you have to be able to get to the back of the motherboard, which means if you had your video card and all your other stuff and all the wires plugged in, because you got switches and things to turn it on that are wired into the case, USB wires and things like that, you have to take that all out to get the motherboard out. So that's a nice design. Max, please, you can't whine the whole fucking time. May have to put his shock collar on because he is a pussy. If you're in the room and don't have him out of the crate, problem is if I let him out of the crate, he's going to be all over the damn place and knocking shit on the floor because he's a giant 75-pound puppy. So what are we going to do? Yeah, we're going to put the motherboard in first. So going to need small screwdrivers and things like that, which I, of course, forgot to get. So I'm going to have to go out to the garage to get them. But we're going to come back. We're going to take the motherboard out, start mounting that into the case. Then we're going to put the CPU in, apply some thermal grease, get the cooler on there and secured, and then start plugging in all of our case wires and things like that. I want to get all that stuff out of the way because before I start putting in cards and power supplies and other things, I want to make sure there's little pins and little wires you got to put onto the motherboard, and we'll go over that. You want to make sure that you don't have your you want to make sure that everything's nice and clean and out of the way before you start putting in the big stuff. If you got wires that are in the way, then you go to put in the massive video card and it's hitting one of the wires and then you got to pull it out. And so we're going to do all that stuff first. So we'll be right back with the right tools. I'm going to put a shock collar on Max so that if he keeps whining like a little bitch, I can zap him. Not a lot, just enough to let him know, hey, knock it off. So we're very good to Max. We love our boy, but goddamn, can he be annoying when you're trying to get something done and you want it to be quiet. So, all right, we'll be back in a minute with the tools and hopefully a quiet dog. All right, we're back in recording. We have a hopefully quiet dog. So over here we're unpacking the motherboard. You want to be careful with these. Pull up the motherboard. Under that, you're going to have the manual, some screws, things like that. Take these, do not lose them. We will be needing to refer to them because, well, I've done this a bunch of times. I'll be honest, I haven't built a computer like this in at least 5 or 6 years, so it might be a little rusty. But here's what we've got. We've got our motherboard. Now, on this, see, they really did a good job on this case. You normally have to install these standoffs. These are already here. So the motherboard's going to be laying on them, and they should be fairly standard as far as their placement. So we're going to carefully lay the motherboard on there, and then we're going to use the supplied screws to screw the motherboard down. We'll worry about which one of these we have to remove for the video card after we see where the video card's actually going to sit. And, yeah, so let's get on that. Maybe that's a good angle. Okay. Okay, so when we look at this, that's where our CPU is going to go, which is going to be right over there. So when we think about where our mounting goes, it's going to be a backing plate that's going to go through these holes right here. There's going to be a backing plate, and then the cooler is going to mount here and screw into that. So that's why if you didn't have a case with this big hole here, you would have to open it up and put it in first. So what I want to do now is I want to carefully lay this on where this is going to go. And we're just going to put a couple screws in to hold it. And I guess I can already tell because I can see the blue towel through there that I have clearance for that bracket. However, again, think ahead. It's kind of like the old adage, measure once, measure twice, cut once. All right, we've got some extra screws here. Let's see what we've got. So in the pack here with the case, there's additional standoffs, and then there are screws. So the motherboard screws are going to be these middle-sized ones, at least for this case. These big ones with the really almost look like a wood screw kind of thread, those are for mounting fans. They're kind of self-tapping because your fans, the housings are plastic and they're not threaded. So this will just bite into the plastic. So those big fat ones are for fans. And these ones, actually, no, I'll take it back. The middle ones are for the drives. If you have physical hard drives, you need to mount into the other side, which we don't. Those are for drives, or if you had a DVD drive. Now, this one isn't set up to have a DVD drive. I don't even see any slot where you would put it. So there is no DVD drive. That's kind of on the way of the dodo. So it's going to be, for the motherboard, these little tiny skinny ones up on top. So carefully open those, set those aside. And again, this is why I use the towel, so this stuff isn't, rolling away. Find yourself the appropriate Phillips screwdriver that fits those screws. If you got magnetic, better, even better. And I think this one is not magnetic. This one fits better. All right. So what we're going to do is put in, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And as soon as I put one in here, we'll move the thing around so I can show you. So you line these up. Now, luckily, it's fairly easy to line up because the peripherals, they're kind of standardized and it fits right into here. So that sort of lines it up for you. Now, don't be a muppet. When you put these screws in, you do not need to torque the shit out of them. Put them in there. As soon as you feel it bottom, give it like 1/8 of a turn. You just want it to snug up, and that's it. It's just providing an anchoring point and stability. The thing isn't going to go anywhere. It's also providing a chassis ground. You'll notice on a lot of these screw holes, as soon as I get the camera up, as soon as I get some of these in, you'll see that there's solder joints that the screws touch, and that's so that it makes sure that everything is properly grounded at multiple points to the chassis itself. You need that electrically. That is required. So go get the rest of these screws in. And again, don't over tighten them. If you do that, you could put pressure on the PCB. You could crack it. You could break one of those solder joints. So I know I'm being redundant, but I'm just telling you, don't do it. Don't be that guy. It's not like a motorcycle that's vibrating and going down the road and you want to keep stuff from, flying out. Don't need that. So, okay, we got that one in. It's just snug. We got 2 more. This is where having the slightly magnetic screwdriver really does help, because on some of these you don't have easy access. And this one up top will be one of those. So I got to kind of stick it to there and hope it doesn't fall. And it's in. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wiggle it, make sure it's not moving around. Everything seems secure. Everything's good, okay? Now let's turn this over from the backside so you can see what we're talking about as far as the mounting screws go. So here's all of our wiring. Here's the fan controller. See how I've got all that room? Beautiful. So we're going to go figure out, we're going to open up now our packing here for the Cooler Master 12 RGB Black Edition. And we're going to figure out what mounting plate, because this one's made to work on a couple different motherboards with different socket types, AMD and Intel. Oops. So let's see which one we need. It's going to be a long video, guys. I could try and cut it down to just the essentials, but if you want to see how it's done and what it's going to take to build your own, it's going to take you an hour, That's just how it works. So we've got this CPU fan. You want to look at the fan and you want to make sure there's usually an arrow showing the direction of the fan. So here we've got 2 wires. I don't know if one's for controlling the colors and one's for controlling, they got different plugs. So we'll have to figure out where that goes. Probably this is going to go in, one of them is going to go into the motherboard. That's your typical fan header for the motherboard. And there's a socket up there for it. But then for controlling the colors and stuff, I think this is going to go over to that logic board that's on the back. So we'll snake that one through. But when you're going to mount this, what you're going to want to do is when it's laying on its back, this is the top of the case, this is the bottom, here's your back. We're going to be putting a cooling fan right here that's going to be sucking air out. These fans all in the front, up here, are all bringing cold air in, washing it across the motherboard, across the video card, which also has its own fans, and it vents out. And then it's got your cooling fan that's going to sit right here. That's going to so cold air in, cold air into the intake of this fan, blows it through into the exhaust fan that sucks it out. Heat is the enemy of computing. So this is going to sit in here like this once that CPU's in there, and we'll get that mounted up in a minute. So let me open up the box for the Cooler Master. Let's see. There's a lot of brackets in here. Let's see what brackets we're going to need. Where are the instructions for that? Not in the box. Case. Corsair safety information, not that. Where did we put? It's for the case. That's the CPU. That's the Arctic Silver. We'll throw that aside. Motherboard. All right, well, there's always something here. You got so many damn moving parts, and this is the problem when you get an all-in-one cooling solution sometimes, is it comes with all these different configurations. So you're kind of, it's not like, oh, it just hooks up this way and it's, obvious. It's not like that. So this is going to be our bracket on the back. And then you've got a variety of other things here. Different clips, adapters, different types of screws, offsets. Oh, and it did come with some thermal paste, so wasn't sure, so I bought my own. All right, so 2 of these are small, 2 of these are wide. So it looks like this is going to sit against the back. Looks like, yeah. All right, I'm going to shut down for a minute here rather than wasting battery. I need to go find the damn instructions for this. Besides, where I safely wouldn't lose it. All right, so Intel and AMD. Intel and AMD. Let's see. Showing how to assemble that, but that's already assembled. Let's see. So what we got to do is, all right, go to your Intel LGA 1700. Looks like we're looking at piece C. All right, let's open this up. All right, so maybe this is all I need. These pieces are actually bundled together, and the other part I was opening was for something else. So let's see what we've got. It looks like we're going to have to mount these brackets. So this is what's going to go behind the motherboard. Okay. Yeah, like that. And these are going to get mounted to the cooler. So this is going to sit like this. There's some screws here. We're also going to need to take this off. Make sure you do that. And this is going to go on like this. So we're going to screw that in to hold it in place. And then these are going to go on, and there's some thumb screws here that are going to screw through the motherboard into the backing plate. So that is how that mounts. That's actually not that complicated. I don't know what this other multitude bag of parts is for. So we'll just set those aside in case we need them for some reason. So it looks like I need to mount those. So see what little screws we've got. Make sure there's nothing else in the manual about this. So this is Intel LGA. Those go in like that. Screw to that on each side. And then it just shows you putting it through and using a screwdriver to tighten them up. Of course, after you've put on the thermal goo. J and H. I don't know what those are for. That's for LGA 1366. Oh, don't need all that stuff. Okay, so literally, it's that. So this is made for like 5 different sockets. That's the only annoying part about building computers these days is like all the sockets are different. You're like, what is this I'm supposed to be getting here? So, all right, let's empty out that little bag. And let's find the little screws, these little guys, that are going to go into this bracket. And before we do that, let's make sure we got the right ones. Making sure they line up. Yup, they do. Okay, so that's that. And then the other one, which I foolishly set down next to these other ones. Oh no, it's already on the fan. So okay, we got the 2 we need. So I don't think you need Loctite. This is really just to hold it centered. So get yourself your small Phillips. Screw that in. Again, you don't have to torque the shit out of it. And then this one's going to go in. Yeah, some things you need Loctite, this you don't, because it's not like these screws are, they're really just keeping it centered. Once this is on, these brackets sit on top of it, and they're going to be pulling it down into it. So it's not like, oh, if the screw came off, technically, the screw's just there to help with alignment. Okay. What we're going to do is take a paper towel, wipe this off, make sure that that is all nice and clean. Have spare paper towels with you because when you apply the grease, you're going to smear it around a little bit with your fingers. And then it's going to, you're going to need to clean your fingers off so you don't get the stuff everywhere. All right, now, this part you need to be careful. You're going to open the socket by pushing this down and lifting that up. You're going to take out this protective tray. Here is where you want to be careful. I need both hands for this. All those pins used to be on the CPU itself, but people would bend the pins easily. So they put the pins here, and on the bottom of this CPU, you're going to see it has contact points. That's why you always have a nice sharp knife with you. You're always opening something. Notice how Max has the collar on, and I have not had to shock him. It's almost like he knows, oh, he means business when he told me to shut up. But you're a good boy when you want to be. All right, so what you need to do is look, see how the ECU, this has just contacts, those pins. You want to be careful you don't drop anything or do anything. If you break those pins or bend them or do something where they don't align properly, your motherboard's probably toast. You're going to need a new motherboard. All right, so this thing's going to fit this way. What we want to do is there's an orientation for this to fit in here properly. And I think it can only go in a certain way. So let's very carefully open this. You do not want to touch the other side. So you want to carefully pop that out. And let's see, how do we know which way it should be oriented? Well, there are two notches here and here. And there's one on the bottom, there and there. They're not centered. So what you want to do is you say it's further away from this corner, and this one's closer to that corner, and it's the same on the other end. There are notches, corresponding notches on this. See that notch and that notch? See how it's further away on that corner? So we want to very carefully just drop this in. It'll settle into place. This is critical. You need to make sure it's not bent. You want to move it. Hear it rattling a little bit. It's locked in the groove. If it was cockeyed, and then when you put this on, this puts pressure, it mashes it down into those spring-loaded pins, you can bend or break the pins. All right, so you want to make sure that that is centered. This goes on top. And push it down and under. That is now locked in place. So now the next step here is we are going to apply some thermal grease. It came with some. I bought a tube of Arctic Silver. This is the stuff I always used back in the day. And it was always good stuff. And I'm sure it's better than whatever little bit of goop they include. So why do you need this? Well, even though that's a very highly polished surface, and even though this is fairly highly polished, there's still little micro abrasions. There's still little micro grooves. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So, all right, this is all MX Cleaner. Where's the goop? Where's my goop? Thermal compound syringe with, where's the syringe? Okay, that's interesting. So I got a box of thermal goo that doesn't have any thermal goo in it. I've got MX Cleaner, MX Cleaner, MX Cleaner. Okay, so I guess we'll be using the stuff that, well, that kind of sucks. Yeah, it was supposed to come with some thermal paste and, I mean, it says right there, thermal compound. Syringe with 6 MX cleaners. I got the 6 MX cleaners. I got no syringe of thermal goo. So, thank God the cooling fan came with some. All right, thermal compound. I guess this will have to work. So we're going to take this, which is probably nothing more than just an alcohol swab. And you want to just clean the surface. Ooh, it smells weird. That's not rubbing alcohol. That smells like paint thinner. So just clean that up. Okay, let that dry, evaporate. We'll use a paper towel to just, nice. You can hear it squeaking. All right, so here's what you want to do. And the reason for this stuff is just putting metal on metal it's not that thermally efficient. No matter how much they lap it and smooth it and try to make sure it's perfectly flat and there's no little micro dips or curves in there will be little gaps. And so you're not truly getting 100% metal on metal contact. You want to draw heat out of this into the heat pipe cooler, which works like a radiator, and draw it up into the pipes where the coolant evaporates, disperses heat through the fins. It's got a radiator in there like a car, and then the fan blows cold air through to dissipate the heat. When you put this thermal paste on, it's to make sure that there are no air gaps, even microscopic ones you can't see. You may think it's two flat metal surfaces, but there are air gaps. There's areas that aren't actually touching. So to get as much thermal conductivity as you can, you put a little bit of this stuff on there, okay? So here's what we're going to do. You put a little bit of a drop on this. You don't want to overdo it. And then you're going to spread it around very thin. You want just the littlest, thinnest layer possible to just cover every millimeter of this. You don't want it clumping. You don't want it, anything like that. So you're going to spread it around, edge to edge, wipe off any excess, and make sure that it's a thin, uniform film. Okay. You don't use a lot. Whatever's left on my finger, I'll just wipe a little bit of it here. Okay. I'm going to wipe off her fingers because it's actually got silver. It's a compound. It's got little little metal particles. All right. See how we've got that all on there? That's what you want. Now, we're going to lift this up. And we're going to take our backing plate and see which way this needs to be oriented. Now, it's got a thing here on one end. I don't know. I guess that would go down, maybe, so that nothing's touching these solder joints. That's probably what that's for, because this would be touching and possibly pressing on those solder joints. Although the lettering is that way. So let's see if it says, let's go back to check the goddamn manual. Let's see what the manual says. Manual has that pointing up, not down. So, okay, we're going the way the manual suggests. I guess that's what the standoffs are for, so that it won't actually touch those solder joints, and maybe that actually protects it slightly. So that's going to go in from that side, okay? And then what we're going to do is I'll turn this around. So this will be like the trickiest part. This is kind of where I almost wish that we had, I did it on the motherboard first. But we're going to take this, move these wires out of the way, and we're going to slowly and very carefully press this onto the motherboard. I almost feel like I should do this laying down. That way it won't want to tilt one way or the other. The problem is, how do I put that in? I don't have this, that thing will fall off. All right, here's what we're going to do. This is going to be a little tricky. I'm going to lean this towards me, rest this on my leg so I can keep this hand holding that. We are then going to, remember the way the fan's set up, and if it isn't, you can always change the fan later. But But the way that this is going to work is I want the fan facing the front. It's going to suck air in, push it out to the back into the exhaust fan that we're going to install in a minute. So let's go ahead and pop this in. What you want to do is carefully align the screws. And tell you what, we're going to take this off. We're going to pop the fan off because I need to get to those screws. Couldn't get a screwdriver down in there. All right. So here we go. We are going to now mount this in. Line the screws up so they go down into those holes. All right. Now, get your small screwdriver that's probably underneath the damn computer that I'm trying to hold up. And what you want to do is get all these screws in there. And start to push them down in. Okay. So we want to get them started threading into the mounting plate. Okay. And like you're doing lug nuts on a car, you want to kind of crisscross. This thing these springs put a lot of pressure. So this is where you kind of want to hold the back side. All right, that one's starting to thread. This one's starting to thread. Go across to the other side. And they'll bottom out. And that's it. As soon as you feel it bottom out, stop. Okay. All right. Bottomed out. Bottomed out. Bottomed out. Bottomed out. It's a good feeling when you bottom out. Or so I've heard. All right. So this is our Cooler Master fan on a rubber damping little mounting tray. So that wire's facing down. You want to snap on carefully. Don't bend the fins or anything like that. Click that into place. All right, this is really the hardest part mechanically. Now, when you look at this, let's go back to the wiring here. So once we've got it mounted, you're going to have let's see. Yeah, so one of the plugs is going to go to whatever controller box, RGB control box you're using, which is built into the case. And the other one's going to go to the fan header. Now, on the motherboard, there are different headers for different fans. One is specifically for the CPU fan, and that's so that the motherboard, which is monitoring the CPU temperatures, it's got a temperature probe down in there, that's going to be monitoring that. So what we want to do is go to our motherboard manual, go look up back panel connectors, memory, we'll need that in a moment, installing the CPU, good. We want to look at a schematic. All right, Z960 Gaming XDDR. So that's the way our motherboard is oriented. Power's up on the top. All right, CPU fan is the second one in. It's the gray connector on this motherboard. And keep in mind, your motherboard may be different. This is a generic, here's how you do it kind of thing. So let's go ahead and connect that. Those are keyed So you really can't do them wrong. So what we're going to do is connect that to the gray fan header in there. And then just push that wire up and out of the way. We'll actually, let's disconnect that. Let's see if we can loop that up so it goes up behind the motherboard. We'll zip tie that out of the way later. All right, so that's fine. That'll go up there. This one's going to go to a fan controller. So let's sneak that one up. Let's see if it's long enough. Well, we might have to do that one. Yeah, let's loop that one separately over to here. And then underneath, and I believe it's just going to click into that. I think, if it's the right style. I mean, they're Corsair fans, so yeah, that one's not going. I don't know where that one's going to go. So, well, maybe we'll just leave that one unplugged for now. I'm not as worried about the colors as I am about, making sure everything works. So let's go ahead and pull that one back. We'll figure out where that one goes. I guess if I had to, I could look at the damn manual again and see if there's a RGB controller. Oh, there is DLED2 CPU fan. So CPU DRAM, boot, SATA controllers, battery for CMOS, F panel, we'll need that. Let's see, Q Flash Plus, USB 1, 2, DLED. So I'm guessing, let's see, are those plugs for this? No, doesn't seem like it. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with that. We're just going to have to tuck that wire up and away for now. All right, so let's start getting to the other peripherals. So the next thing we're going to want to do is going to be, let's put in our memory sticks. So let's check the, see what slots we should use for this particular setup that we're doing. So we're going with the G.Skill RipJaws. And let's go look for which DIMM slots. There's four slots rather. So DDR-A1, A2, B1, B2. So when we install them, we want to make sure that we're getting dual channel. So while technically you could probably put them in whatever slots, you want to make sure you get everything working properly. So let's go in the manual. Okay, that's the CPU install. 2 modules, 4 modules. So recommended dual channel configuration for this motherboard. If you're going to do dual channel, 2 modules, you want to do A2 and B2. So A2 and B2. All right, due to CPU limitations, read the guidelines, blah, blah, blah. Okay, pin is oriented. So dual channel memory configuration that provides 4 memory slots and supports dual memory technology. After the memory is installed, the BIOS will detect it, blah, blah, blah. All right, so recommended dual channel memory configuration says, again, just making sure, use A2 and B2, and you leave A1 and you leave B1 blank. If you're going to use 4 modules, then you populate 04. So we're going to go for A2 and B2, which if we go back to originally, A2 is the second one, and B2 is the last one. So that's what we're going to do. Now your memory is keyed. Again, there's a slot so that you can't really put it in backwards. If it doesn't feel like it's going in, then you're probably doing it wrong. So let's go ahead and pop these out. All right. See how there's a key there and it's off-centered. So the way this is going to go in is it's going to snap in that way. So in this case, the lettering facing out. So we want one to go in the second one. So we pop those tabs. And then we want one in B2. Once I pop these in, I am going to double and triple check and make sure that I've got that right. Put those in. Snap it in. Goes into B2. Line it up with the grooves. Lock it in. Let's double check. Make sure we did it right. See how those are in there now? Pretty straightforward. All right, let's go back. Fan header, we covered that for the CPU fan. We're not using water pumps for a liquid cooling solution, so RGB LEG strip headers, it does say to use those plugs, so maybe we'll figure that out. I'm not as concerned about the colors of the fans, honestly. Let's see. Back to the memory modules, display port, CPU, got that. Memory, again, I'm always double checking everything. You see right there, so if I have problems later, you can verify with me. 2 modules, A2, B2, leaving B1 and A1 empty. So that's what we've done, so that's good. Now, let's move on to installing the hard drives. Let's see. All right, let's see. ATX connectors, we need all those. All right, if you set up M.2, now RGB strip headers. That does say that upper corner is for that, but it's like it wouldn't snap on there. We'll have to play with that. Okay. Yeah, it's showing that. So our M.2, we're going to have to remove these covers. All right. These are cooling covers. So under there are the slots that we're going to need for the hard drives. So let us carefully remove that. Slide that out. Okay, it looks like these screws are captive. Yay! Someone thought ahead. All right. Peel this off. This is thermally conductive. It's to help cooling. So on the primary one, that is where we're going to put our 1 terabyte. That's going to be our Windows boot drive. Man, the old days you had to have big drives and connectors and all kinds of shit. All right. SATA cables. Well, this has its own heat spreader, so we might not be using those covers because I don't think it's going to fit. So this goes in, and it should just click in and snap into place. And what we're going to do is have to put a screw right there to hold that in place. All right, so let's find our bag of screws. SATA connectors, don't need that, don't need that. Get rid of this. Try to clean up your work area as you go. Otherwise it'll get confusing. Maybe it's a little tiny screw. Let's see. Where's that cover we pulled off? And then I took this off of. Let's put that back on in case we ever had to use it for another one. It looks like that itty bitty screw is about that size. So the motherboard came with a couple of these little tiny screws. So again, make sure you got a screwdriver that'll fit that. And I do. So you're going to put that in. Luckily, I didn't lose the screw because of the magnetic screwdriver. So let's put that in. And let's get that down to where it's anchored. Again, don't over tighten it, just snug it up. You just have to make sure it doesn't move around. So that's one hard drive. Now we're going to remove this case. See how that's in there now? It's shorter. So what normally you would have done was you would have put that in, and then you would put this big cooling plate in, and that would have pressed it down. This is thermally conductive tape. So it would have stuck to that and got a better thermal conduction, and then this screw on the end is what would have anchored it. So now I got to take this cover off to get to the other ports to put the 4 terabyte in, which again has its own heat sink, so we're not going to have to monkey around with that too much. So these heat sinks, take them off, wrap them up so you don't scratch them, and that way if you ever had to change hard drives later and you didn't get one that had its own cooling heat sinks. All right. Come on, there we go. There we go. Okay. So those screws are not captive. So I dropped 2 of them. Need to find the other one. Hoping it landed here somewhere. We'll put those in a Ziploc baggie. Yeah, for some reason the little one was captive. Not sure why that one's not. Is it rattling around in there? No, must have rolled somewhere. We'll check for that later. So now what we want to do is look back in the manual. We got those slots down there. That's where we got to put the extra one. So we want to look at them. SSD card. I don't think it matters unless you're going to... Let's see. Installation notices. I don't think it matters, honestly. We'll just go to the next one. I don't see any numbers on them. So let's open up the other Western Digital. Four terabytes compared to the old hard drives we're used to using. So, okay, so now look at this one. This one doesn't have that heat sink. So this is keyed. So this is going to go in, and then we're going to put that cover back on. So I probably need to find that 4th screw, goddammit. So let's lock that in using another one of these itty-bitty screws that the motherboard came with for that purpose. And then we're going to put the cover on. All right, get it on, line it up. Have it fall off the screw anyway. Second time's the charm. Make sure that is fully seated in there. Okay, snug it up. Oh, motherfucker. I keep forgetting that these things are not captive. It's weird because 2 of them are captive and then the ones on the back are not. Not sure why that is the case. So let's shake it out. Figure out where the damn thing went. Okay, where did it go? What was I saying before? This is why you do it on a table, so that you don't lose the shit. And then I end up losing it anyway. I can hear it rolling around. I have no idea where the goddamn screw went, which can be a problem. Because if it's touching something on the PCB, I'm going to turn off here while I look for this. All right, we're back. Now remember that part earlier I said I'm a little rusty on this. Haven't done this in a while. Yeah, it shows. So here's what we're doing. We got this installed. We installed the rear cooling fan. And here's the thing, when you build a PC, I'm showing how to do it, but different motherboards, different cases, different peripherals are going to be different. So this is kind of more of a basics guide on how you do it generally. But we've got this all set up. We've got both of our hard drives installed. We got our RAM installed, CPU, cooler. It's mounted in the chassis. We need to still wire up the fans, and we need to wire the motherboard to the switches, because you've got a power switch, you got a reset switch, you've got USB ports and things like that on the front of the case, and those have all got to be wired into these pins down here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our power supply. So I'm going to turn this over. The way it mounts on this is it's modular, so there's no wires connected to it, which is really nice. You got a cooling fan on the bottom that sucks air in, and then it exhausts it out the back. So on this case, it's vented on the bottom. And that's why I like this case, because it keeps everything separated. The power supply creates a lot of heat. So there's physical walls in here to prevent that heat from really getting up into the main chassis. Also, it having it on the bottom, there's a screen here with a filter. So when it sucks up dust bunnies, hey, there's that damn screw I was looking for. Sweet. That's where it got trapped. All right, don't have to worry about any extra pieces left over. We'll put that in. So this is going to mount in like this, so that your plug goes in from the back. You got your power switch, and then you're just going to install from the bag o' connectors what you need to power whatever peripherals you want, which is nice, because the old power supplies, again, back in the day, you had all these cables and you wouldn't use all of them. And so you'd have to bundle them and try to hide them away somewhere. Here, you only use what you need. So this is going to go in and slide in from here. And let's see, put that down. And it should just kind of drop into place. So we may have to finagle it just a little bit to get the screws to line up. But we're going to go ahead and use the supplied mounting screws and get this settled in there. And then we're going to figure out what things we need to power the fans and well, there's no drives. So really, you're going to have power supply going to the motherboard, I believe, on 2 ports, one near the CPU, one over, call an ATX connector, which will be on the front of the motherboard. We're going to need 2 power cables, I believe, going to the video card that we're going to install last. And then the only other power source I think we need, I like this case because it's got multicolored lights and all these fans. The downside is there's a shit ton of freaking wires back here that you got to figure out kind of what to do. Luckily, they're mostly labeled, except for 2 fan headers. So I guess I'm just going to plug those into the motherboard. The one that goes into this controller board for the RGB, it's got what looks like a hard drive, like a SATA power connector. So I think instead of trying to run all those fans off of the fan header on the motherboard, which can only supply a certain amount of wattage, we're going to go off of a SATA connector. So when I get the power supply in there, I'm going to look and see if there's a cable that plugs into this. And if that's the case, this goes into a USB port, because that's how the motherboard and the software is going to communicate to the board what LED colors to show or what to cycle through, or however you want to set it up. That's going to go underneath, and we'll plug that into the motherboard in one of the USB slots. Once we figure out the power for this, then it's going to be just going, there's one for HD audio, one for audio, there's one for the USB port on the front, and those will just all plug into the motherboard. And the last piece is going to be, there's a couple wires that are with they have connectors on the end, but they're almost like individual wires. And we're going to have to figure out, going through the manual, the pin out for the reset switch, power switch, the front LED light for the status light for the hard drive. It's not hard. It's just getting your hands in there and figuring out which thing goes where. So let's go ahead and set up our little camera on its tripod. And let's go to the pack of screws that we got with the power supply. Where's that screw I was said we saved? Yeah, we need to go put that one back in. So I'm going to set that aside. And so here's what we do. We're going to need to lift up and just line it up and hold it in place. Every fucking time. Every time. Bella, shut up. Bella! Hey. I don't care if you look dapper in your little sweater. Shut up. Let's put these screws in. Once you get the first one or two in, that'll kind of hold it in place. Don't tighten too much because you might need to wiggle it just a little bit to get the other ones to line up. But looks like that's going fine. And then this one, fine. All right, so let's go ahead and tighten that up. Make sure it doesn't flop around, but again, don't over tighten it, strip it. All right. Now that we did that, before I forget, let's go put this one back in. That goes on the cover for the secondary hard drives. So let's flip this over. Put that in. Perfect. All right, so now I'm going to do the video card last. Ugh. I also have to figure out what to do with this. This is an RGB connector. I have to decide if I want to use the RGB feature on that, and I need to figure out where it goes on the motherboard, or do I just tuck it away and not use it? So that's flopping around for now. So I mentioned before we got plugs on the back. So let's go in to our bag of goodies here. Now, you'll have a manual. You want to see what it is you're going to need. I believe for something like this, this is going to be SATA connectors for hard drives. Now, we normally wouldn't need that. We might need that for that fan. What I'm looking for is the main ATX power connector. So this, we need to figure out, let's see, that's going to be for a drive connector. We're going to need some of those PCIEs. Those are going to be for the video card. We'll need to figure out. So that's what most of those are. That's a SATA connector. Let's set those aside. So let's sort these. SATA connectors for drives. That's a long one. We're not going to need that. SATA connector for hard drives. Don't need that. This is for the CPU. So there's the motherboard power supply, and it used to be just you powered the motherboard. As things got more power hungry, you started getting more, started needing more and more. So here's what we need. We're looking for, we've got our main ATX power supply. This plug is going to go on the motherboard side. It is keyed, so should be... really can't go in any other way. And then it's going to go plug into two spots on the back. So let's get this one out, unravel it. So that's one. We need that ATX. That's for the motherboard power. And then on the CPU, now on my CPU, it's got an 8 and a 4. So I need to see if there's one in here listed. That's PCI Express. So it's not that. We'll save that. Here's another CPU. So which one do we need? That is PCI Express. So I've got a CPU that's an 8 and an 8. And then I've got another one that's an 8 and an 8. So the question is, do I need a different type of plug? Or do I not need that 4-prong? Well, once again, let's consult the motherboard manual, see what it says. Power, ATX 12 volt, ATX 12 2x4. So that's your ATX. The other things for the front panels are down here on the bottom of the board. So we need to find the one for that power output up top. Let's see. Maybe it'll be was there a manual for the power supply? Or do they just assume it's kind of self-explanatory, which of course half the time it never is. So ATX does say it wants a 4-prong. I don't see any 4-prong in there. So this is going over specifications, form factor, blah, blah, blah. Install the CPU. Okay, did it. Apply thermal grease. Done that. Install memory. Done that. Expansion card, that's coming. Back panel connectors, we'll get to that. LAN port, yeah. ATX. Yeah, so it's showing to use both. So my problem here is going to be, I've got the 12s and they're both labeled CPU. Now I will say, you know what happens sometimes? I think what this means is you're going to use both of these. Okay, and I said this is again where my memory is going back 5 years since the last time I did this. Some motherboards might have an 8. Some might have a 4. You can use the 8. It's just going to overlap, and it's going to it'll just not click on. If you look on this end, see how it's got like a double prong as far as the clip. I believe what we're going to do here is we're going to click this in, and 4 of them are simply going to hang off and be unused. So we're going to go by the one that says CPU end. We're going to plug in that one into the 8-prong connector. So just so you know what I'm talking about down in here. I'm going to put my damn flashlight. Let's see. See how there's an 8 and a 4? We're going to put an 8 on the 8, and then we're going to put an 8 on the 4, but only 4 of the connectors are going to connect. The other half 4 are going to hang off. Some motherboards have 2 8s. So you can use either the connector, you can use it either way. It's not going to make a difference. So they're both the same length. Good. Let's go ahead and click that one in. Snap it into place, and then we'll feed it through a hole in a second. And let's make sure this one clicks on as well. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, this here feels like you could disconnect this. That's exactly what's going on. One of these is 2 4s stuck together. So if you needed to pop one off, you could. I think you can just connect it and leave the other 4 connectors hanging there, and it's not going to go anywhere, and it'll look tidy, and it will be fine. Yeah, clicks in just fine. So that's how you do it. So now we got these 2 things. And now we've got this end, the ATX, which goes there in front of the RAM. And that's the standard location for an ATX connector. It's been that way for, 20-something years. More. All right. Put that in, and then try to pull it out, wiggle it, make sure it clicks. All right, so now, in order to keep everything tidy, we're going to carefully feed this through. There's a gap here. It doesn't look like it from your angle, but I assure you it's there. feed that through. Maybe twist it a little while we do it. Actually, let's disconnect that real quick. Get that hump there. Okay. Now let's bend the wires back. And let's reconnect that. Alright, clicks into place. You pull your wires back in. Look how nice and clean that is. So while this is a little bit more of a pain than it used to be with all this extra stuff, they did think it through really well. So that's going to come back. And on this side, we're going to be able to go ahead and we'll be able to zip tie it to something and then run it down through here and here. There's these Velcro straps. So we'll be able to strap that all in there, keep it all nice and tight and out of the way. Yeah. So that's how that works. Let's go ahead and just lightly cinch that out of the way. Okay. And then this will go through the second one, and we'll tuck it in behind that, and that's going to go into the power supply. So now, let's see, can I remove these drive bays? Because I don't need them. There's hard drive bays in here if you got mechanical hard drives, but I am probably never going to use those. So I know I can remove the plastic trays. Question is, can I remove the metal tray? Is there a screw somewhere holding that, or is that riveted or spot welded in place? I feel like it's spot welded in place. That's a shame, because if I could get rid of that, I'd have all this extra room down there. Yeah, they are. Well, I say they're riveted, but the way they're clipped in, they look like they would pop out. So, and there's no screw holding that in, like it looks like there should be. But those look kind of like they're riveted, but maybe not. So let's just pull at this a little bit, because if I can pull that out, I have to get to the back of the power supply, and this is sort of in the way. So can I get a screwdriver in there to pop that out? Yeah, I feel like this can pop out. I just don't know if there's a clip somewhere that holds that in place. But that really does look like it should come out. Oh, there is. There's two thumb screws right there. Boom. Perfect. Get rid of those. Awesome. Perfect. We don't need this. I don't have any mechanical drives. So now, look at all that space. That's what I wanted to see. So now, I have all this space to get to all my stuff. All right, cool. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, I guess I'll just shut off and I'll connect these all. And then I'll come back and show you what I did, so you're not sitting here watching me for 20 minutes. I'm going to have to edit out so much of this to make this watchable. Anyway, we'll be back. All right. It's taken way longer than I thought it would. It's been a while. Bear with me. CPU's mounted. Memory's mounted. Hard drives mounted. Fans mounted. Power supplies mounted. I'm going to need to reroute these two cables because I just realized that the video card that's going to go here, I need to pull these connectors out. These are for the front USB ports, and these are going to need to come in from the front. So I'm going to have to pull these out and bring them in from this side so they can go and fold this way. And then the video card's going to go in. So let's do that real quick. Ugh. So part of the things I've been doing off camera here is, and this will be different for different motherboards, it's going to be, your case is going to have wires that need to go to the power switch, the front USB ports, the reset switch, the headphone jack, and those are going to get installed down in those jumpers down there. So just look at the instructions in your manual for your motherboard because they may be slightly different positions. And then your case will tell you which ones are for which. So I need to pull these wires out. Let's see. Make sure I get the right ones. That's for audio. All right, we have to undo one of our Velcro wraps on the back. And let's see. This one. And this flat one. I'm going to pull those out from here. Get this last piece done, and then we can go ahead and install the video card. That'll be the last part. And then we got to go fire it up and install Windows and all that stuff. So let's see. This is going to go here. Okay, that goes in. We'll pull in the slack on the other side. And then the last one was this. This is for the other USB port. So there's a USB 3 and a 3.2 or something, and one of them is USB-C and one's a standard size. So let's see, can we get this done? All right, so that's in. Bend the wire a little bit, don't kink it too much. So we'll make it look clean, and I'll tidy up the slack here in the back. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to lay this thing back down. The video card's going to go in, then we got to run 2 power cables. It is a thirsty. You know, today's graphics processors in a lot of ways are more powerful than CPUs, which is why so many people are using them for Bitcoin mining and all that crap. So let's get all this stuff out of the way. Let's go ahead and get our power cables in. So let's see. What I've got to do now is get my hands down in here and plug in 2 PCI Express. So let's see. Let's do 1. If you're like, I can't see. Well, again, different power supplies are different. So you need to know the steps, not exactly where every plug or everything that's in, you know, is located specifically on my motherboard is, my power supply. All right, so that's 1. Those are going to go in from the side here to the card. And then we need another one because it needs 2 power sources. Like I said, it is a very power hungry peripheral. Video cards are absolute powerhouses these days, which is good because the gaming on them is absolutely incredible. However, you got to have a power supply and cables and everything that are all up to the task. So let's go ahead and feed these through this hole here. Again, we'll pull the slack back out and zip tie everything all nice. This side isn't going to have a clear case. It's going to be steel. The side you're going to be able to see into the computer is the other side. And so we want to keep it all tidy. If it's a little bit of a rat's nest back here, not as critical. Oh, for fuck's sake. Just getting so many cables now in here, it's getting hard to keep everything straight and buttoned up. All right, so that's going to go like that. That's going to get folded down, and this is all going to get covered, so not worried about it. So what do we got to do to install a video card? Well, buy a nice video card. Let me see if I can do this at an angle, make it a little easier. So, see that white PCI Express slot? That's the one you want. So we're going to pull that little clip back. There's a little clip that'll hook that in. Move your power cords out of the way. We'll arrange those as we have to later. And you're going to have to look at your card. Now, this is the mighty Radeon or AMD RX 7900 XT. Weighs like 5 pounds. It's ridiculously heavy. It uses 2 slots. And so what we're going to have to do is you're going to line this up and see which of those slots are going to have to come out, basically. Oh, bless me. All right. So we're going to remove 2 of these covers. Okay, keep the screws. There's a clip right here. That's going to help retain it, keep it in the PCI slots. When you push it in, you should hear a click. When you want to remove it, you're going to need to get like some of it really tiny hands or reach in with a long screwdriver and click that out. It's going to be held in by that click, the tension on the slot, as well as 2 screws that are going to mount it to the chassis. So what we're going to do here is gently drop this in. Make sure you're not hitting wires or any other plugs, and nothing's going to interfere with it. You want to line it up with that PCI slot. Kind of rock it until I don't know if you heard that, but there was a click. So that is now in, but we still need to secure that. So let's see. Take your Phillips screwdriver. Don't tighten the first one down because you might have to wiggle it a little bit to get it to line up. None of this is hard per se. Building a computer sounds daunting. It's really not. It's just every case is different. Every peripheral is different. The coolers are different. The motherboards are different. So while you have to do basically the same tasks, it's not like, oh, if you've done one, you've done them all. After a while, yeah, you'd probably just kind of know instinctively what things look like and where they are. But if you're not building computers all the time, then there's a little bit of a, having to figure out, oh, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. Now, this has 2 plugs on each. The thing is, it's running off the same power source. So I don't know. I wish I had these that didn't have, I wish it didn't have it. I wish it was an individual, just a straight up, and I probably could go. So this is probably going to be temporary just because I'm going to have these dongles hanging off that I don't need. Now you could piggyback them, but I don't know if that one circuit being split to 2 is actually going to allow it to draw enough current. And that's why I've got 2 in here. The problem is each of these has a double end on it, and I kind of wish it didn't. I don't have any others. I mean, I've got this one that says CPU. If I had a spare one of these, maybe, but I might have to go to Corsair's website and just order a couple, and then it's an aesthetic thing here. So I'm going to plug this in. This is a good question. How does this go in? I guess it's going to go like that. So I can either do it on the end and try to pull the slack back, or on this case, I can do it here, and then I've got this piece hanging off. I think what I'm going to do is use the ones on the end. And what you want to do is there's like a little shelf here that faces out. So it's going to be like that. So I think that's how we're going to do this for now. So we're going to connect that in. And then connect that one alongside it. Okay, then we'll pull that slack back as much as we can, try to tidy that up. And then do the same thing on this one. So this goes in. We want to make sure it's flat side to flat side, not flat side to tapered side. Actually, yeah, if we do it that way, it's going to touch and push away. So that's got to face outward. So twist this around. Yeah, like that. And that's going to go into the second 8-prong plug. And at this point, all we got to do now is just tidy up, and we're done. So we'll do a quick recap. I'll edit this down to make it as least amount of tedium as possible. All right, let's see. I can't get that one in there. Fucking flashlight. It doesn't work at all, or it flickers. So, are these keyed in some way so they can't? Well, I guess they are. So I guess I had that backwards. That's good. It being keyed so you can't jack it up. All right. All right, so let's see. That's in. That one's in. I mean, that doesn't look right. Something does not look right. That one went in the way it was supposed to. This one looks like it's backwards, but that is rounded on top, so it really can't go in any other way. And this can't go over, can it? No. So these are keyed. So if it's going in that way, it must be the way that it has to go in. Just make sure it's seated properly. And now let's tug in the excess wires. There we go. This one. Yeah, it's not as tidy as I would like it. I'm going to see if I can find different connectors for that. I'm sure you can buy them separately. And if that is the case, we will be good to go. Now, the question is getting all this shit buttoned up so I can put the damn cover on, because there's a lot of bulk in here. I feel like I can route that a little better. So let's go in and unplug these from this side. It's like, oh, the joys of building. I forgot how much unfun this can be. It's like the end result is fun, but yeah, doing all the damn grunt work and trying to get your hands in there. You know, it starts out simple. You're like, oh, there's all this room. But as you start filling it up, that room and that wiggle room and that space to maneuver goes away really quick. All right, so let's run these out and pull them underneath. All right. Find an open slot down there. All right, that one's in. I should hopefully just be able to get the cover on. If not, I'm going to have to move some wires around. But before we do this, I'm going to button everything up and go over it all real quick. Make sure we've checked everything. All right, so those are out of the way. run these on the outside like that, and then down under there. Yeah, from the other side, it's going to look pretty clean. From this side, it's a rat's nest. All right, so let's go over everything that we've done. Make sure, check everything off the list. So, what did we do? CPU, cooler, fan going that way into that fan that we installed, plugged into the fan headers up above, and I believe that's what the LED thing is for, to control that from the motherboard. We got our G.Skill 64 in bay A2 and B2 for dual channel mode, 64 gigs, 32 by 2. We've got our external USB for the up here, plugged into the motherboard there. Just double check, make sure that's in, steady, straight. Everything looks good. So we're good there. Our ATX connector's in. All that's clicked into place. This is plugged in. We got our hard drive 1 under there, hard drive 2 under here. This is in. All the power connectors are in. I do have this extra piece here, but we're going to get a piece that doesn't have this stuff. We'll replace that. We got the 3 case fans it came with, all blowing inward. They're all plugged in along the fan headers on the bottom. Audio's plugged in. USB 2.0 is plugged in. The reset switch, let's just make sure those are all seated. Reset switch, the power switch, and the LEDs for the front. Those are all plugged in. Power supplies plugged in. Anchored. Those are anchored. Cables pulled out of the way. These wires are run up out of here. We got the CPU power, motherboard power. I think we're good. So I'm going to go button up the back. I'm not going to bother putting this case, this cover on yet. Also, this thing has areas up here. There's a bunch of slack. If you wanted to put fans on the top, this is magnetic. You can remove that and put fans up here. And this is so you can get to the screw holes and then put this back. So you can have fans up here. You could put a water cooling rig in here, or take these fans out and mount your water cooling rig here. So if you had a radiator, instead of having this big heat sink, you could have your heat exchanger mounted to the CPU. So there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do here. So I think we're good to go. Looks pretty clean. The only thing that we got to clean up is that connectors. So I'm going to go online and look for new ones. I could probably tidy those wires up just a little bit better. But that's how you build a PC. Now the next step is going to be installing Windows and all that shit. And I guess I can probably do that later. But I got to reset my other computer for Chance. So he's going to get my old gaming rig, just doing a full wipe and setup on that. That one looked crooked. Okay, that's straight. Everything looks good. You don't need network cards and all these other things. You don't have a DVD drive anymore. So between shit tons of RAM and then those little hard drives like that Western Digital black drive, you don't have a lot of peripherals anymore. There used to be, here would be your drive bays, right? You'd have all your drive bays here sticking into this area. You might have a cooling fan down there. And then you'd have to have power cables going in, data cables to go from there to the motherboard. That mostly goes away. I mean, the motherboard supports them. There's a bunch of SATA slots back there where that light is. But that stuff kind of goes away. So building it's not that bad. It's just kind of getting the wires and everything you need in place and figuring out the different motherboards have different pinouts and things for you to connect your wires to. All your other peripherals, like, you don't have to put network cards anymore. You got all this shit back here. I mean, I've got USB 3.2. I've got a really fast USB 3.2 Type-C. I got tons of USB ports. I got my 2.5 gigabit network. I've got optical audio out. I've got line outs, things like that for audio. Now, I might need to figure that out because the current sound system I have, I don't know if it's got an optical out. I'll have to see if it does. I think it's a 15-year-old sound system. I might need to get better speakers because on my other audio cards, it's got front, rear, center channel, things like that. This just has a stereo line out, which will power the front speakers in the subwoofer, but nothing else really. And then it's got optical out. So I may need a noodle on that. It might be time to upgrade I bought those speakers, I think, in my apartment in Pennsylvania, which was 2002, 2003. So those are 20-year-old speakers. So they've served me well. It's a Logitech THX 400 watt sound system. Sounds pretty good still, but anyway, that's the build. So I'm going to put the back cover on. I'm going to leave this open, so if I have to troubleshoot anything when I boot it up and start to install Windows, then I got to put away all my trash. And yeah, we'll come back for the install and see how it's running. All right, people. We're about to wrap it up for the evening. Ran into a couple little pitfalls, but we got through everything. So put it all together. Haven't figured out how to control the LEDs on that fan or that fan. They're both on and working, but they're not cycling through anything like here. So also, remember those connectors I was talking about? There, how it has those extra pieces kind of hanging off. I ordered a set of red cables that are single. So they'll just come up, they'll be nice and red, they'll stand out and add a little bit of color in there. And they won't have those pieces right there. They'll just be straight cables right to the power. And it'll clean that up. And while I'm in there swapping those cables out next week, I'll figure out where I got to plug in my damn the RGB pieces for the two fans to get those lit up. But they are both spinning. Video card's working now. It's real quiet, but as you start doing anything CPU intensive and it starts heating up, immediately you feel all the fans are controlled by the motherboard. So it's on it'll monitor temperatures and basically start picking up. So to recap, i5 Gen 13 13600K, which is a very fast chip and overclocking friendly, and I think it's got 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores, so it's a 14-core processor, 24 megabyte cache, 2.5 gigabit LAN for my network, which is hardwired to the router downstairs. Tons of cooling fans in there. ATI RX, or I'm sorry, I keep saying ATI, it's AMD now. RX 7900 XT with 20 gigabytes of GDDR6 on board. 64 gigabytes of G.Skill RAM, and 5 terabytes total of M.2 Western Digital Black Series SSD storage. So this thing is fast. So at first we plugged it in. Everything's working now after installing Windows and all my drivers and stuff. Haven't installed any games yet, but I got my external drive restoring some backups. I got 3.3 terabytes free on the storage drive, on the 4 terabyte drive. So I got tons of storage there. And then I still got a little over 0.8 terabytes on my boot drive. So the boot drive is just for applications, Windows, iTunes, whatever programs I'm running, other than games. Games take up a crazy amount of storage. So when I install a game from Steam, I keep the OS running on one drive, the game's loading off the other. They're both SSD, so my load time should be wicked fast. Before I had Windows on an SSD, but everything else was on an old traditional platter, mechanical drive. And then I got a 4 terabyte NAS that's hardwired downstairs for the media server. So the first problem I had, and really the only problem I had, and I was like shitting a brick because I haven't done this in a while, it wouldn't boot up. It wouldn't turn on. Like, it would turn on, the fans would come on, but nothing would come up on the screens. I thought there was something wrong with the ATI card, so I plugged into the onboard on the motherboard, HDMI and display port. Nothing would come on. And then just troubleshooting, I found there was 2 little LEDs that were on for CPU and memory. The board didn't have the most up-to-date BIOS, and so it didn't recognize the 13th gen Intel processors. So it wouldn't boot up. So then you're like, okay, I have to flash the BIOS. Well, how do you flash the BIOS if it won't boot up into the BIOS, because it wouldn't even post. It wouldn't do anything. Nothing would come up on the screens. It just sat there. So luckily, the Gigabyte boards, you don't have to even have a RAM or a CPU installed on the motherboard to do a damn update. You have to go and get a USB drive. So go get a little, USB drive, and you just download the new firmware, and it's just a bin file. Rename it gigabyte.bin and just put it on the root directory of this USB port, of the USB drive. That's it. Make sure it's formatted for FAT32, not NTFS. So you just download the file, put it on there. Well, the problem is I don't have another working Windows computer right now. The other one was already formatted. My work laptop, IT disabled all the ports. So I had zero USB. I mean, I have USB ports on there, but you can't use them for anything. So apparently this is some new corporate security thing to disable all the USB ports. I have a MacBook, but it's USB-C, and I need a Windows PC. So I'm just sitting here. I'm like, fuck, what do I do? So finally my wife got home. I was like, I need your Windows laptop real quick. So sent her the link, unzipped the file, renamed it to gigabyte.bin, and just copied it to this. On the back of the motherboard, there's a shit ton of USB ports, like 8 or 10 of them altogether. There's one highlighted in red. It's USB 3.2, and it says on it, BIOS. You just take this that has the new BIOS, just plug it into that port with the machine off, and on the motherboard, there's a button down between the some of the pin connectors down the bottom edge of the motherboard. You push the button, and it automatically turns on the fans in the CPU, and it just starts flashing, and it just looks to this drive that's in that specific USB port, and if it sees the bin file, it'll just automatically load it. You don't see anything going on. You just sit there like, is this going to work? Is my shit going to work? Or do I have a $3,000 paperweight? And what ended up happening was, what had happened was it actually started flashing, and then it rebooted. It rebooted a couple times. I hit delete, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm in the BIOS, setting everything up, setting my boot order for my M.2 drives. I got a Windows 11 on the little USB drive. It took like 9 minutes to install from start to stop with all the updates in between. It's blazing fast. So now I'm up and running in Windows. Tomorrow I'll install my games and all that stuff, but I started copying over. I've got like 25,000 MP3s in my music collection, so I updated iTunes, got that. Got my Plex server set up for the media server so I can pump whatever 2 terabytes of movies and TV shows we've collected over the years, DVD rips, all that kind of stuff. So we could pump it to all the Apple TVs in the house. So yeah. I think it's pretty much ready to go. I just got to get the new cables and figure out how to get the LEDs to turn on those other fans just so it looks nice. It's an aesthetic thing. So that's what we've got. Nice fast processor, 64 gigs of RAM, 5 terabytes of SSD M.2 storage. We've got a killer video card. I mean, it's one of the fastest cards you can currently buy. It's in the top 5, top 4, maybe even top 3. And lots of cooling and a really nice case. It's quiet. Now, I imagine once I start playing Modern Warfare 2 or something, or whatever the newest one is, all the fans are going to kick on full blast and it'll, make a little noise, but I don't really care. That doesn't bother me. Turn up the speakers a little louder. So there we go. All that's driving through an Acer G-Sync 144 hertz monitor, but actually I played the games on the 42-inch 4K. And that was where the 2070 Super that I had was just starting to run out of steam. So that computer's going to chance. We did a full reset of everything, formatted the storage drives and reinstalled Windows and got it all set up for him. The monitors that I have for him are 1080. The 2070 Super will play anything you want, maxed out settings at 1080 all day long. That'll cover him for the next couple of years before he has to update a video card at that resolution. 4K, it's starting to struggle, but 1080, not even breaking a sweat. So that's it. I'm going to hopefully chop down by the time you've got to this point. This is the recap. Hopefully you didn't have to sit through an hour and a half of me cursing and trying to figure stuff out. So I'll try to chop it down as much as I can. But if you want to see the steps, there's no way to show you all the steps without really clever editing. Like do this and then I just do that without seeing the rest of the process. So it'll be what it is. If you got any questions, throw them at me. But that's the new powerhouse rig. So that should keep us happy for the next few years. I'm sure in 2 or 3 years I'll just need to update the video card. The processor and the RAM and the storage, those will be good for the next 5 years. No concerns there. The last one lasted me 6 years. And all I did was every other year update a video card. And I'll do the same here. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. That's how you build a computer these days.